And we continue at 106 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, we've gotten a lot of emails about California Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Chuck writes in at johnnydontlikeshow@gmail.com. Ricardo Lara is unqualified and blatantly corrupt. That guy is about as qualified to be insurance commissioner as I am to be an astronaut. California's political corruption is rampant.
I can't argue with that.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. The state of California, throughout its history since joining the Union, has almost gone off the edge a few different times. One of the things that continues to save us, or has saved us in the past, when we've been ready to drive the car right off a cliff, is our dominant industries. Our dominant industries have been very involved in the state of California in making sure that our government was clean and effective. The railroad industry was probably the most glaring example of this. Southern Pacific Railroad, whose CEO became governor of California, Leland Stanford, their council became chairman, or I guess Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. And that one company, that one entity, spent tons and tons and tons of money in races for governor, the state legislature, the statewide constitutional offices, to make sure that the state where they did business in functioned. Because if the state didn't function, they couldn't make any money here, so they felt it was incumbent on themselves to make that happen. Right now, the railroads are not the dominant industry in California. Silicon Valley is, which is interesting because Stanford University was founded by Leland Stanford, the CEO of Southern Pacific Railroad. The new industry that runs California, the tech industry, has been hesitant to use a heavy hand in state elections. They are reflexively liberal, particularly when it comes to social issues. A lot of them have graduate degrees. They live in coastal communities. They're high-income earners. Just about every demographic you can look at points in the direction of the Democratic Party. But the Democratic Party has wrecked the state of California. And even reflexively liberal people like Elon Musk, who at one point in time was that, said enough is enough. And now he is a vocal supporter and proponent of Donald Trump's, and he's running the Doge program. It's not just him. Peter Thiel, David Sachs, and others are doing the same thing. So all of that leads to the question, is Silicon Valley ready to swipe right? That subject was written about quite extensively by Chadwick Moore. He did a deep dive on that subject. He is the New York Times bestselling author of Tucker and a contributing editor at The Spectator. You can follow him on X at Chadwick_Moore. Chadwick Moore, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for stopping by. So let's start out with the $64,000 question. Is Silicon Valley ready to swipe right?
Well, it appears that way, right? We've seen, especially most recently in the headlines, Jeff Bezos, who, of course, owns the Washington Post, made this announcement to his editorial staff at the newspaper that he wants the editorial pages of the Washington Post to every week or every day reflect the idea that he supports free markets and liberty, personal liberty, and free speech. And of course, in reaction to that, you had the editorial director of the paper, the opinion page editor, resign, and you've had other Washington Post writers throw a fit and walk out since these announcements. So, but it comes to the point of wondering. You had Mark Zuckerberg, who also has had 3 meetings with President-elect Trump and now President Trump since November. And Mark Zuckerberg was, of course, one of the greatest violators of free speech when it came to pro-Trump voices through Facebook and Meta. You have all these people suddenly in Trump's second term turning around. So I think the bigger question is has these people's values really changed, or are we just seeing something more in line with, the fact that these people are just sort of, it's now suddenly sort of safe to be a Trump supporter. They're just sort of following where they think what might benefit them. And then ultimately these are good things, of course, to have people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, at least tentatively saying they're on the side of Trump. But, what's to say about these people's values, and did they even have any to begin with? And are they just sort of following where power leads them?
Yeah, and right now Donald Trump is in charge of the country, and Donald Trump is in charge of who gets positions on these regulatory commissions that make decisions that impact these businesses. The Republicans run both houses of Congress right now, and they have a majority on the Supreme Court. So the oversight or the institutions that are in place to check Donald Trump certainly are going to be coming from a very similar ideological sort of place. So it could just be, hey, we're in the business of making as much money as possible. This is the crowd who's in charge now, so we're going to do whatever we have to do to make sure that we curry favor with them.
Yeah, and it's sort of quintessentially American. It can be really distasteful to see these people who we believe were absolute ideologues. Another one being Sam Bankman-Fried. Okay, Sam Bankman-Fried, the cryptocurrency fraudster who's currently in jail. He donated tens of millions of dollars to Democrats, and now in recent interviews he gave and even appeared on Tucker Carlson's show, he says that he's rejecting center-left politics and he's very open to Trump. And you just wonder about these people, and it's a sad state where you think that it's almost better if you believe they were true believers in the causes they support, rather than just funneling money where they think it's going to advance their own interests. And, the country be damned, no matter how destructive the policies that they once supported were, no matter how much they trampled on the free speech and the civil rights of Americans, if they could just turn around and be on the side. You also had Google's CEO at Trump's inauguration. He, alongside Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Jeff Bezos' wife, and that outfit that she wore, and Mark Zuckerberg, all paid for very big tickets for the inauguration of Trump. And, it's just curious to watch this turnaround that they've had. But in the same vein, they're business people. They're trying to make a living, and it might be that this is just something that America needs this to sort of in this road of correction that we're on right now.
To the extent that the leaders of these companies, let's call them the Cardinals, are moving to the right, are their employees doing the same thing? Because you think about the types of people who work in these industries. You're dealing with a lot of college graduates, a lot of people specifically with graduate-level degrees. They live in these coastal towns that are affluent towns. They certainly are socially liberal. Many of their friends in their social circle share those beliefs. Are those people starting to move to the right, or just their bosses, the people that run the companies?
I think it's just their bosses, and have been waves of people we've seen who've been quitting as soon as their bosses. That seems to be a sort of generational malady, that people think that their bosses need to have the same politics as them, and they'll quit if they feel that if that's not the case. Elon Musk had maybe put before he was running Doge, where he put the fear of God into a bunch of tech workers when he laid off over half of Twitter, and nobody noticed any difference in how Twitter functioned. Showing that a lot of these tech jobs that we've known for a long time are bloated. They have so much money, they don't know what to do with it, and perhaps a lot of the jobs are absolutely useless. You see something different with journalists, especially like at the Washington Post, who are such ideologues. They can't stand to work for a publication they perhaps don't agree with one or two editors or the publishers there, and they'll raise a stink and leave. But you haven't seen a lot of people at these companies, but even places like Facebook, which is just rotten with liberal ideologues working there. You don't really see them making much of a fuss about it, but that doesn't say that they've necessarily changed their opinions. But the whole country Trump has become so normalized in a way, and the Democrat Party and the left has become so defanged after the last election. They really don't have much to stand on right now.
How big of a deal was it that Elon Musk broke ranks and became a Trump supporter? And I say that because he's not just a tech executive. He's the big dog. He's the richest guy in the world. And you go back and you try to find something similar to this. I look at when Oprah Winfrey came out and endorsed Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton. That kind of gave female celebrities and female bold-faced names permission to not feel obligated to support Hillary, where they can then come out and support Obama if they preferred him over Hillary in that Democratic primary. And once Oprah Winfrey did it, it was like the floodgates opened. And I see similarities with Elon Musk, where once he came out of the closet and said, okay, it's not just me sounding conservative, it's not just me supporting Trump here and there, I am full on dark MAGA, and that's just the way it is. The moment he did that, it seemed like the floodgates opened.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, and it almost feels like what Oprah did for women and giving them permission to reject Hillary is maybe what Elon did for young men, especially. And we saw the youth vote for Donald Trump really surge in this last election. Elon's always had that appeal with young men, especially with techies, with the gamer culture. You know, he's always been a sort of libertarian-minded person. He's never been one of these sort of autocratic, authoritarian Democrats who had a switch. And I think that absolutely had a case that had an effect on I guess what we're calling the normalization of Trump, although that seems like such a horrible way to put it. But, he is also, this huge hero. He was this huge hero of the environmental left, the climate left, because of Tesla and his electric cars. And now you have these organized protests against Tesla where they're vandalizing cars and burning down dealerships. And this man just not too long ago was seen as a hero of the environmental left. And simply because he's saying very rational things. He's a very and he's basically just cleaning up waste from government. That's all he's really doing with Doge, something that everyone on the left and right is on board with, not the corporate left or these activist types. And look at how they're responding to him. But it's not having the same effect. Average people are seeing these things, and Trump's approval rating and Doge's approval, well, last I saw, is very high. Trump's is, I believe, the highest it's ever been since he entered politics. And the Democrats, the last I saw, are at the lowest approval rating they've been in recent history for sure, 29%, something like that. Nothing seems to be working, whatever they're trying to throw at him. And Elon is, an extremely charismatic person and extremely smart person, and he doesn't fit the mold of what the media has tried to paint to be, your knuckle-dragging, hateful Trump supporter. So there's no way that didn't have a huge effect and gave people, I think, a lot more courage to be more publicly in support of Trump.
A lot of people were predicting that by now, or certainly long before now, that Trump and Elon would have had a falling out, that Elon is richer than Trump and Trump wouldn't like that Trump certainly doesn't have the same technical background that Elon does, and that would frustrate him, and there would be personality conflict between the two, and they would have a divorce at some point. And based on everything that I've seen, maybe you disagree, I don't know, it seems like the opposite is true. It seems like Trump is almost becoming like a grandpa to some of his kids, little X among them. And it seems like they get along famously, and they yell and they curse, and sometimes they fight and whatever, but that's how they resolve things. And to me, it's better to resolve things that way than to just be passive-aggressive and gossip about people behind their backs. If they have a problem with one another, I think they just resolve it then and there, and then they just move on.
For sure. The media and the left certainly was trying to drive that wedge between them. If you recall, with the President Musk, they're trying to make President Musk happen, and every talking head was talking about President Musk, thinking that they were playing on that they were going to rile up Donald Trump's ego and then drive a wedge between them that way. But, this is a different Donald Trump than we've ever seen. And I think a lot of us believe that it was had to do with not only what he had to endure through the lawfare against him, but also, of course, the assassination attempts, both of them, but primarily the one in Butler, where Trump, his approach to governing seems to be different. He seems to, now that he's surrounded by people, he learned his lesson in the first term and is surrounded by people who he trusts, and people who have his back and who believe in his movement, Musk among them. He seems to be a little more chilled out, especially where the ego comes from. I don't know if that's just my perception of it, if other people see that as well. I like the grandpa reference. I think that's what a lot of people are seeing. And that attempt to drive a wedge between him and Elon didn't work. they seem to be still getting on famously.
Last question before you go. We know that these Silicon Valley titans are willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved in federal policy. Many of these companies that we've been talking about are based right out of California, right here in California. And California has never been in a worse place than what we're in right now in terms of homelessness, crime, the insurance industry being in crisis, our budget being out of whack, fire policy, water policy. You name the subject, and we've got 1,000,001 different problems. And the people in charge either aren't equipped to deal with those problems or choose not to. Certainly, Gavin Newsom is now spending all of his time doing a podcast and running for president and could care less about all of the problems that are plaguing the state of California right now. If you're running your business here in a state that doesn't function, sure, you can be in a bubble, and sure, you can largely just make yourself immune to many of those problems. But at a certain point, you can't. If your building burns down, you can't. If you can't insure your building, you can't. There are times when bad government will impact the ability of these businesses to conduct business. Do you foresee a scenario where these titans do at the state level what they're doing right now at the federal level and say, okay, we're the big dog. We can assert our power and authority whenever we want to, and we've had enough, and we're going to clean things up in Sacramento, and we're going to do what we did in Washington, D.C., here in California, and we're going to get the state back on track again?
It's a great question. I don't know, because it's, the California machine, the California Democrat machine, and the sort of leaders that it produces who are just symptoms of machine politics. They've never really been tested. They've never really had to fight for anything, and they just have to fight their way in through that system. They're not leaders. They're not natural leaders, and it doesn't. The Palisades fire that you guys had out there, that all that destruction just seemed to be such a lesson in that. It was everything that could possibly go wrong under one-party Democrat rule happened under that event. You had everything from your DEI hires at the fire department and up in through city government to environmental toxins from EVs and mandates from the water management, from just absolute total system collapse happened there. And yet I don't really see anything much changing. Gavin Newsom is putting on this face because he wants to run for president that he's going to start cleaning up California. You've got a lot of with the World Cup and other events coming there, at the Olympics coming, I assume Gavin's going to build these Potemkin villages and get rid of all the homeless for a little while. But I don't really see any sort of systemic change happening there. I mean, you need sort of like a nonviolent dictator to come in and start whipping things up. But now it just still seems like it's machine politics, one party rule, and Silicon Valley leaders don't seem to be putting any pressure on local government. They don't want to interfere. Perhaps it's just too ingrained of a force right now for that to happen.
One more question before you go. So we know how easy it was for Silicon Valley to go from being Obama Democrats to Trump Republicans. Could you see that same population of people easily supporting Gavin next time?
Oh, for sure. If they think that, if they see that's who's going to win and that's where power's moving, then they absolutely will. I don't, if he's the nominee, I don't know if he will be. I don't know if a California Democrat like Kamala Harris, now Gavin Newsom, who comes from that machine, I don't think can win on the national stage. They haven't been tested nationally. They may think that they're really wonderful in California, but they don't. I don't know if they play very well in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio. Certainly not, and certainly not Gavin Newsom. So I don't even know if he would get the nomination. But if it, hypothetically, if it were, if these people see the winds turning in that direction, I feel like they'll run wherever power takes them. So they could jump off the Trump train immediately and support the Democrat. I think that is the soul of these people for sure.
Chadwick Moore, New York Times bestselling author of the book Tucker, available online at Amazon.com if you want to send Jeff Bezos more money, and the contributing editor at The Spectator. You can also buy it at your local bookstore if you wanted to. And you can follow him on X at Chadwick_Moore. Chadwick Moore, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe so you can download all the episodes. Do a Google on the YouTube and get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. Although, if you happen to be listening with your headphones on, I have one piece of advice. Only use one headphone if you're in Oakland, so that way you'll be hyper aware if there's a shootout.
And he starts shooting back, like firing back. Pa, 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 pa.
And right now it's time to open up the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And surprise, surprise, we're leading with crime in Oakland.
This might feel like deja vu. Tell me if you've heard this before. A Chevron in Oakland got smash and grabbed.
You don't say.
This is the 5th in the span of a week. For more, here's KGO.
This morning, burglars targeted yet another Chevron gas station in Oakland. Police say they...
Why Chevron?
It used to be 7-Eleven.
Police say they rammed a vehicle into the building and then took off with the safe. That's the M.O. This is the 5th incident this week in Oakland after 4 Chevron stations were targeted in the span of an hour early Tuesday morning. ABC 7 News reporter Suzanne Fahn gives you a closer look at the damage.
It is so frustrating, and we're scared for life.
He is scared for life.
I would be scared for life, too.
Take a look at the damage done to the side of this building at the Chevron gas station on San Pablo Avenue and 35th Street in West Oakland. Manager of Fabwork, Asayas, is worried about his safety. He doesn't want to show his face, but he wants everyone to know what happened. Asayas says someone rammed into the gas station around 4:30 this Friday morning.
Hit the building 3 times, and they just get inside with his car.
What kind of car needs 3 different crashes to finally get through the wall?
Not a Kia.
Hit the building 3 times, and they just get inside with his car.
A witness captured video of the smash and grab in progress. You can see a couple of guys pulling something out of the store.
In about like 5 or 6 people, they came with a couple of cars.
How much money could be in the safe of a gas station?
It can't be much. Certainly not enough to justify driving a car through a wall 3 times.
In about like 5 or 6 people.
I mean, I would imagine 90% of their transactions are from a credit card. So how much cash could actually be in there?
It has to be under $5,000.
In about like 5 or 6 people, they came with a couple of cars, and they took safe machine, and they...
Oh, of course, the safe machine.
And after they take the contents of that safe machine, they're going to dump it, we know where, out near Magic Mountain.
And there was massive damage.
Asayas says the store clerk who was working at the time wasn't hurt, but he quit right after the incident.
That cashier is no dummy.
I would imagine...
If the cashier is dummy.
If you have any job where somebody drives a car through your place of business, you're going to be looking to work somewhere else.
Could you imagine working the all-night shift at a gas station in Oakland right now?
These people need hazard pay.
You have to have a death wish to do that.
Asayas says the store clerk who was working at the time wasn't hurt, but he quit right after the incident.
He just quit.
This ain't worth minimum wage.
No, it's not.
I'll go do DoorDash.
He just quit his job, and he said he's not going to work anymore, and even I'm scared for my life. This is a murder attempt. They drive inside with car, and it's so horrible.
Unfortunately, OPD treats it as property crime, so even if they came upon the scene like the first instance of this last week, OPD can't chase them.
No, just fill out a form online.
But you're right. If you're driving through a building where there's an employee inside, how can we not call that attempted murder?
He could have been stocking shelves right near where the car went through.
Early Tuesday morning, surveillance video captured images of a red car ramming into a Chevron gas station on Lakeshore Avenue. A group of people then started rummaging through the debris. It was one of 4 gas stations hit within a span of an hour. The suspects all took off before officers arrived. Police aren't sure if the same group is responsible for the smash-and-grab burglaries.
It's probably the same guys, considering they have not been caught.
If they're not the same people and you just have large populations of people stealing cars and driving them through walls in Oakland to steal the safe, then you have an even bigger problem than you thought you did.
Barbara Lee, do you really want to tackle this?
Quite frankly.
Last July, more than 80 people ransacked the 76 gas station store on Hagenberger Road.
Oh, we're never going to forget that one.
No, we won't.
Hagenberger.
You got to remember, the conditions in the Hagenberger were so bad that Gavin Newsom on his old podcast went to San Quentin with Marshawn Lynch, and someone who was doing life in San Quentin prison went up to Gavin Newsom and says, "What the hell is going on in the Hagenberger?"
That's where we got that drop.
Hagenberger.
The owner says vandals did more than $100,000 in damage, making off with $22,000 from the store ATM. Back on San Pablo Avenue, Assayas wants the city of Oakland to step in and to ramp up police patrols.
And 3 times.
Won't matter. They can't chase them.
If you elect Barbara Lee, guess what? Nothing's going to change.
And 3 times, 4 times, we got robbed, and huge damage, building damage, structure damage. It's so hard for us to survive. And all of the cashiers.
You know, you hear the term food deserts all the time. Oakland might be the first city to be a gas desert.
It's going to be like the Sahara.
And all of the cashiers, quitting their jobs, leaving their jobs, and now we are struggling.
In Oakland, Suzanne Fawn, ABC 7 News.
If you see a for hire sign at that Oakland Chevron that doesn't have a front door right now, and you apply for that job,
If the cashier is dummy,
you might be a dummy. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
David writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com with the subject line,
if the cashier is dummy,
I would go over to In-N-Out and work the street order line. Oh, they're gone? Those cashiers are definitely not dummies. Only In-N-Out to ever have closed a location. Oakland Hagenberger.
And Randy, it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
if the cashier is dummy,
Questions?
And this edition takes us to the softball diamond.
In the city of Lodi, where they make a lot of great Zinfandel, a girls' softball team can no longer play softball because the homeless took over the field.
Well, you know, every so often, angry spectators call the umpire a bum. But now it's the actual bum.
For more, here's CBS Sacramento.
And now at 5:30, a field of nightmares. Lodi High.
Okay, I kind of like that one.
I guess Sacramento is small market.
And now at 5:30, a field of nightmares. Lodi High School softball team striking out at their usual.
Of course.
You got 2.
Lodi High School softball team striking out at their usual practice spot, all because of a growing homeless encampment. Thanks for joining us here at 5:30. I'm Hunter Sowards.
And I'm Marley Ginter. The team had to move.
You got a homeless person on first, second, and third. The bases are loaded.
They've been loaded in California for a while.
And I'm Marley Ginter. The team had to move their practice this week from the Lodi softball complex on North Stockton Lane. Your reporter covering San Joaquin County, Carmela Karcher, is getting answers from the city on what's being done to address those concerns and what the team is doing in the meantime.
This isn't supposed to happen in small town California. This is supposed to happen in big city California.
They're going to have to put them in a dome to make sure that they can control who comes in and out of the door.
It's a lot of nonsense.
Joe Silva has lived in Lodi for over 35 years. Over those decades, he's seen more of the homeless make their way to the Lodi softball complex, with the encampments growing right outside his front door.
I'm concerned about the school because girls have been walking by and they would try to tell them, hey, come over, want to start talking to them. And the guy,
they're hitting on the teenage girls?
Well, from their point of view, it's fresh meat.
It's now is probably the best time ever to remind people that there is a portion of the homeless population that are sex offenders that were let out of prison.
Oh, it's a big population because we emptied the prisons. There are literally thousands of people in California who are supposed to be in prison who were let out due to prison realignment or due to idiotic parole boards or judicial appointments. And because of that, we have a lot of dangerous people in the encampments on the streets who should be behind bars.
And the guy who was following them, I told, hey, get back over there, stay away from these girls.
But the problem isn't only impacting those who live in the area. It's now affecting...
It's affecting that dog, too.
Everyone's angry.
It's now affecting the Lodi High School softball team.
I get a call from my daughter, and she said, Mom, it's the worst I've ever seen it.
Erin Jubry, one of the team's moms, took these pictures this past week after her senior daughter's practice was forced to move from their usual field again.
You know the fencing right behind home plate? They're using that as a clothesline.
You know, I think this team has had to move more times than the Oakland A's.
People need to see what's going on. I don't think they've taken it seriously this whole time. And nothing like seeing somebody hang clothes on your fence to really get the point across. They weren't just hanging out. They had moved in.
And that means the softball team has to move out.
Another time.
According to Erin, it's been a problem for years.
The coaches had to call the police because there was even an instance where a homeless person was exposing themselves to the girls. We've had...
It's dinner and a show.
Whoa. Hey, ladies, take a look at this Louisville slugger.
We've had girls being yelled at, ogled.
Also ogled.
That too.
Ogled. Homeless going through between the cars of the girls, and it's just been very frustrating and scary for them.
We took their concerns straight to the Lodi Police Department, but were told to contact the city. No one from the city would agree to go on camera. The only response, a statement sent to CBS 13 saying in part, the Lodi Police Department has addressed encampment issues at the complex.
No, they haven't.
No, they won't speak to the news.
Why in Lodi, of all places, are they letting this slide? San Joaquin County has a DA that doesn't put up with this crap.
Nope.
Including posting cleanup notices and removing excessive property that has been blighting the area.
How about the guy who decided to show everyone his bat?
Oh, that's a crime associated with poverty, Randy.
But for neighbors and moms, more action is needed.
Everybody's failing these girls right now. Everybody is.
Well, the city also says they're working with the district to address those concerns. And we're told the Lodi Unified Board of Education will be reviewing plans at its upcoming meeting to build a new softball field at Lodi High.
Of course, that's the answer. Instead of being able to use the softball field that already exists, we have to build a new one because we're giving that one away to the homeless.
No, I'll tell you, what's going to happen, whether they know it or not, is they're encouraging vigilantism. One of these bums is going to expose himself to the wrong girl, and that girl is going to go home and tell her dad, and the dad is going to show up with some kind of firepower, and he's going to clear out that encampment. And I know they say we don't want people to take care of these problems themselves. Well, then the government needs to work. The government needs to do their job. They need to enforce the law. If you don't enforce the law, you're going to force these girls to engage in dangerous situations. And at some point, something bad is going to happen, and then someone's going to overreact, and then it's going to be a big problem. If you don't want a big problem on your hands, enforce the law and clear them out yesterday. All right, we've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. Katie Porter says she's in it to win it for governor and did a sit-down with Fox 11's Alex Michelson. Katie Porter, in her own words, up next, right here on the John Phillips Show. Talk Radio 790 KABC.